Hello, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you for your willingness to do this.
Oh, sure,
Early
sure.
morning.
Yeah, and I'm Vicki Schindler from the OT program. Been at Stockton for 19 years, so coming up on my 20th year. So what I'm talking about, according to what Wilda had, suggested that I do, is to tell you about how I've engaged my teaching, service, and scholarship all into one big project. And I've done that through two of the classes that I teach. And I've done it pretty much since I began here at Stockton. So what I was going to do is to just tell you of how I embedded these three together in my courses and how that's worked for me to be able to produce scholarship at the same time I'm doing my teaching and my service. So I do have a whole bunch of slides. It's mostly like a quick slideshow, but the main message I was going to get across is how I've intertwined them. Okay, so, and it's within two programs. One is a program that I have with Columbia South America, and the other one is called the Skills for Success course. So in the OT program, it's a master's program. It's a 2.5-year full-time program, 80 credits. And I teach other courses too, but I teach 2 out of the 3 research courses. So they happen in the second year of the program. And the students in these courses choose a primary track because these courses, in addition to teaching research, they're our level 1 field work, which is a requirement that we have for our program. So within that, the students choose a track, and they can either be in a mentoring track where they work with in the Skills for Success program, and that's where they mentor an undergraduate Stockton student with a learning disability, autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, or a mental illness. So they can choose that track, or they can choose the Columbia track. And that's where we go yearly on spring break. We're going in our 5th year to Columbia, South America. We go to Bogota. And then we even go a little bit outside of Bogota. I have some pictures of that to show you. So the way that this all came about is when I started here years ago, and I started to teach the research courses the second year I was here. We went through a whole bunch of trial and error in trying to find meaningful research for our students, which was a little hard to do because they're not practicing yet. They're just entry-level practitioners. So along the way, we decided to do a supported education program, and that's how this all came to be. So in the beginning, it was a program, but I felt the need to make it more accountable with the students who were enrolled. So that's how it became a course over time. So it is a GEN course. So on top of everything else, which works out well for me, I get an overload every semester because the GEN course is the undergraduate. So that's above and beyond my load within the occupational therapy program. But these are embedded, the students, the graduate students in my program are mentoring these undergraduate students. So it's embedded together. It does run longer than a regular class in order to have all this happen. The class runs for 8 hours a week. So, but it does include this mentoring part and includes the research part and the supervision part, all that type of thing. So the students within these 2 classes complete research projects. And then the research contributes, the research that they do is my research. So the students are doing pre and post testing, and they're doing it like I have the OT students from when they very first enter the program, that fall semester of their first year, the first week. I have them do some pre-test on their level of comfort with this population, and then they do post-test their very last semester. So the students, the OT students, I collect data on them. The undergraduate students, they do a survey on what they feel their problems are and their goals, pre and post. We do pre and post testing on their task skills and their communication skills. We do a sensory survey with them because a lot of them, especially the kids who have autism and ADHD, have sensory issues. So we do a whole bunch of testing in that way that then is my data that I do research on. So the Skills for Success program, the OT students, and then the students who go to Columbia, there's some pre and post testing that they do on cultural competency. So I was going to just tell you a little bit about this Columbia program, just to give you an idea of how it all works out. So we have, there's two parts to it, and that's us going to Columbia, and now too, for 5 years, we've sponsored their students coming to us. So we are a big group that goes down during spring break. It started off 5 years ago, sort of small. You know, we started the first year with 13, and then we went to 20 something, and then for 2 years I took 40. But that really proved to be too much. Yeah. So I didn't really like that. I tried it for 2 years, thinking the first year, okay, I'll work out the kinks. But I couldn't even interact with all the students. There was too many people.
The kids pay their own way?
Yeah, they do pay their own way. So they know this. Like I had started inviting my students and having them choose a track when they very first enter the program. So they have a year and a half to get the money, to put it in financial aid, to go for scholarships. It costs $2,100 total for the week.
That's airfare,
Everything.
transportation, room and board,
Meals.
and they're responsible for their visas, obviously, and their passports.
Yeah, and they don't need a visa, only a passport. Mm-hmm. So, so we've been taking yearly spring breaks. We have exchange agreements with 2 universities down there, and I have pictures of them. So we've had over 120 participants in health science and the Spanish program. They go with us too. To date, we have another trip going, in 2 weeks. And then there's academic, clinical, and cultural aspects of it. And then to us, the university, the main university that we have an agreement with, Universidad del Rosario, those students come to us for 9 weeks in the fall. And so only 4 students, they have OTPT and speech. They come to us for 9 weeks. And so they have both programs are academic, clinical, and cultural, but of course they're here, a much longer time. We're only there a week.
When their kids come here, where do they stay?
Well, they've been staying in homestays. Yeah. So it's next year, we have it all worked out for next year too, the homestay that they'll stay in. And then the second school we have virtual classes with. So this is the first university that we have an agreement with. This is Universidad del Rosario. And this university is 360 years in the making, and it's a very traditional type of university. It's big, it's very big for Columbia, and it's a prestigious university there. Like 35 of the presidents of their country have graduated from there. So it's like the Harvard of Columbia. So this is their main campus. That's our first group that went when Teresa was with us. You can see her there, Mary Lou. And this is the second school that we have an agreement with. So this is a much smaller school. It's in the northern part of the city. It's just this one building. And all they have is OTPT and speech. Yeah, so it's very different. We don't have anything like that here. So then we have clinical aspects. We've been to a whole variety of places. This is a place that's called Batuta, and this is a music program for children with disabilities. So these kids, this is the only program, often the only schooling they receive for the whole week. They go to Batuta 1 to 3 days per week, and these are kids from low socioeconomic means and also with disabilities. And some of these kids, they have such poverty going on there that some of the kids who really need a wheelchair don't have a wheelchair. They just put them in a resin chair and bring them in the resin chair.
How's the language barrier?
Well, the majority of people really just speak Spanish. But when we go to Rosario, they have to achieve a certain level of English before they even graduate. So there's a lot of English-speaking people there. And their students accompany us. So, I do encourage our students to try to learn some Spanish, but when we're only going for the week and they have so much else going on, they don't put a whole lot of concentration on it. But when their students come here, they have to even achieve a level of English before they can qualify to come here. This is another place we visited, El Camino it's called. And this is a voluntary government program for people with mental illness, addiction, who were basically on the street and are looking to try to turn their lives around. Another clinical place, this is El Codito. This is a very poor invasion neighborhood. They have 17 invasion neighborhoods just in Bogota alone, and that's because of their 60 years of civil conflict. People had to get shoved out, forced out of the countryside and just came into the city, and over time just started like with tarps and stuff like that, and then built these neighborhoods, but they're really in very bad shape.
What do you mean invasion? Are you talking about like they created them, like they took
invaded,
this place
yeah,
over and then built houses?
Yep. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of it too.
Oh,
Because I
okay.
traveled down there too. I'm trying to think. I've been to a town.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So Universidad del Rosario has a community house there, a clinic, and we've gone there for the past 3 years, and we go into the neighborhood and we see, the type of work that they're doing. And in fact, this year, see this man right here? This man was shot by a stray bullet when he was 10 years old. He's now almost 30. He's been in that bed ever since. And we just finished a fundraiser in which we bought him a wheelchair. So we're bringing the power wheelchair down to him. So for the first time in almost 20 years. I know, so praying everything's gonna work, but we got a really nice deal on the wheelchair, and it does everything, tilts and rises and
Does
this,
he
that, and
know?
the other thing. Yes. So it's been his dream to have a wheelchair ever since it's happened. He never had any rehab. He never had nothing. He's been flat on his back in that bed. So it is going to be a very big transition for him. But he lives like they see this is like a typical home. This one here. Yeah. So, and this is their clinic. So that's our students there a few years ago. That's their clinic space.
So these clinics really look forward to the kids coming down.
Yeah. Yeah. And then with the first year we went, we didn't even know what we were getting into. And so last year we brought them a whole bunch of supplies. And when we brought the supplies, like we went in and they have shelves, the shelves had nothing on them. So they said they could just take everything and anything. So this year we're bringing like 10 bags of supplies, and we're bringing a wheelchair for him. And when he found out about the wheelchair, I guess he must have said something in the neighborhood. And there's a little girl who's 4 years old and also has quadriplegia from some syndrome. Now I'm blanking on the name of it. So we've got a wheelchair for her that we're adapting. We got to donate it one. So
No issues going through customs?
no, I don't think so. Now what we had to do, and this is the one part I'm still waiting on, is we're trying to take these wheelchairs for free on the airplane because the one for him was 400 pounds. Yeah, and the one for the girl is like 200 pounds.
They're
But
trying to get them without getting extra charged.
right, so this foundation that they have here that goes with this, they wrote a letter to the airline, asking them, because they do have that policy, if it's a donation, that they'll let us. Yeah, so that's the one piece we're waiting on, but otherwise we have all the other pieces in place. So, and then we visit this orphanage, and this orphanage is a little bit outside of Columbia. This is how I got started with the whole project, because my husband and I adopted our daughter from this orphanage, almost 30 years ago. She's the same age as Alicia's son. They went to school together. Yeah. So, but anyway, what happened with all this is that, see, in our program, our OT program started as 16 students, then it went to 20 students. So when it was 20 students, I just did the mentoring. But then about, I don't know what it is now, 6 or 7 years ago, we went to 30 students. So when we went from 20 to 30, I didn't know how I would do it because I couldn't do that mentoring program with that many students. I knew that it wouldn't work out well. It would sacrifice the quality of it. So I thought, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? So at the same time, my daughter and I went back down to Columbia so she could learn all about her roots and everything like that. We went to the Sorbonne. And then when I came back, India's office, the Office of Global Engagement, announced that they wanted to expand their international programs and they wanted to move into countries that we didn't already have something with. So then I had the idea that I could do this and I could have the 2 tracks. So that's how all this came to be. So in doing that, I did want to make a connection back to Fauna because now they don't have as many adoptions out of Columbia. It's really sort of closed up because the country's really improved since the time that, we adopted my daughter. I mean, that was in like the height of Pablo Escobar and all that. So that's gone mostly by the wayside. So now it's a daycare for low socioeconomic kids because still 40% of their population lives in poverty. So anyway, we go there, we get a tour, and then our students run groups with these little kids. That's one of our groups and the Fauna playground. Like there, see Luis Garcia is there. There's Javier Sanchez, Pat McGinnis. That's Peggy Gray from nursing. Monica from speech. And then we have the cultural aspects. So we do have a tour company that takes us around. We go to, this is downtown Bogota. So we go there for one day. We go to museums. We go to Monserrate. Another day we go to a coffee plantation. So that's outside the city to the south. Okay, and then we switch. These are students from Columbia who have come here. So these students were just here this past fall. So those are OTPT and speech students. And then they have also educational settings. We set up a lot of sites for them to go to, and then cultural events. This one here was very fun. This was the first group that came, and we went into New York for the day, and it happened to be the day of a big parade, like from a lot of the Latin American countries. And we didn't even know it, and we stumbled across it, and we found these people from Colombia, and they happened to have all these costumes with them, and we put on the costumes and marched in the parade up there.
Okay.
I know. I had never done anything like that in my life, so that was fun.
Why would you go to Elizabeth?
Oh, because Elizabeth has a little Columbia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was the IKEA.
Yeah.
No, they have a section there.
Yeah,
Okay.
little Columbia. They have restaurants and stores and stuff like that. All right, so then the growth of this project, like I said, it started out, this is 2015, it started out small like that. Then each year grew a little bit more because there was, interest from the other programs with it. So, and we grew virtually to see now it's grown in all these different ways. So then as a result of that, there's been a lot of scholarship. So not only in our program, but also in some of the other programs that went. So, peer-reviewed presentations, not as much on the publications, but a lot of presentations, but a lot of student research has come out of it. Distinguished Student Research Fellowship, Graduate Research Symposium, and their students, when they come, they present, and the Press of Atlantic City had done 2 articles on it. And then just for me, myself, my own outcomes with it. And now the other program that I have. So this is the Skills for Success. And like I mentioned, this is for our students with disabilities. So it began in 2005, and like I was mentioning, began as a program and then transitioned to a class, which has helped a lot because of the fact that because it makes them much more accountable, when it's a class, and it counts towards their graduation credits. So there's a grade involved, so that helps a lot. Because it is a dual program, and really for it to work, I have to make both sides work at the same time. So attendance is even a big part of the grade. It's 15%, but you know, we have to build all these things in so that it can work on both ends. So it runs fall and spring semester, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 2:30 to 4:20. Students can roll 1 day a week or 2 days a week. And there's 20 mentoring spots per semester. So like I was saying, it is a dual program. So for the OT students, it's within their research curriculum and their mental health fieldwork. And then the undergraduate students, it's a general studies course, but it can count for up to 8 credits, 4 for GEN, 4 for ads and distance. So what happens is the undergraduate student is paired one-on-one with a second-year master's level, you know, occupational therapy student. And Wilda's son was in our program, and yeah, he mentored with that. So the research, the pre and post testing, like I had mentioned, for the undergraduate students, and the, whoa, I must have did something where this is going on fast forward. And Likert scales for our graduate students. What we do with them is along these goals. So what happens is when the undergraduate student comes in, they work with the OT student, and the first thing that they do is they bring their syllabi for their classes the whole semester. Then they have to lay out a calendar for the whole semester of what's due, so we can see when the busy times are and the later times are. Then for the classes in which they have a paper, like anything bigger than a very small paper, they're supposed to, this is what we tell them to do, and they work to do, break it down into the subcomponents so that they're not trying to write a paper, you know, a day before it's due. Now, what I really try to gear towards is incoming freshmen. It works best with the incoming freshmen because what I found is in high school, they're used to this structure already built in place. They have a test at the end of a unit, the paper's already broken down, and then they get here, already college, and in some cases, the classes are set up that way, but many classes are not. You know, there's a midterm and a final. So they're used to just studying a day or two before because it wasn't too much material. If they have that approach here, and it's a midterm and final, they're in trouble. Same thing with a big paper. So we build in that structure and the time management and organization. And what that means, like the papers and projects are broken down, and we assign self-assigned due dates to it. And then with classes that have exams or tests or quizzes, they need to bring the notes that they got in class that week and explain those notes to their mentor. So even if they're taking calculus or computer programming, which a lot of them do, there's a lot of science and math, especially the kids with autism. We have an idea of how well they understand the material by them explaining it to somebody who doesn't know it. You know, so if they can explain it and say, well, this formula says this and it's used for this or that, you know, then we know they understand it. But if they say, I don't know what this means, or, you know, there's something missing here and I don't know what it is, then we know that there's trouble, and we have to figure out, you know, do they have to go back to the book? Do they need to go to tutoring? Do they need to go to the office hours? What do they need to do so that we don't get to a couple of days before the exam and they don't know what the material is? So that's how it works for all of that. And then the social aspects of college. A lot of them do have challenges with that. So there's been everything, you know, roommate issues, even things like they're not sure, some have difficulty like even just taking care of themselves and maybe bathing and showering and washing their clothes and everything in between. So they have a goal with that. I think that, no, there was something more here, and I can't see. I did that. Oh, there they go. Okay, so this is just the scholarship that I've had. Mostly, I think it probably works out to be about 1 publication per year between the journals and the book chapters, and then presentations.
It has helped that you say the pre and post test that the students do in the GEN class. It's the basis of your research.
Right.
Because that's the data that you are analyzing and then writing about.
That's it. And then also for the MSOT students, there's data on that too, on their experience with this mentoring process. And then the data also for the students on the Columbia program, pre and post testing with that too. So it's built into my research courses. So that part, because I know sometimes that can be hard, right, for faculty to be able to even come up with where are they going to collect data. So it's built in. So that part makes it easy for sure. It's still a struggle trying to find the time to write because these are time-consuming projects. Like even with the mentoring project, I meet with the student and the family ahead of time. I interview everybody. I'm often in touch with the families during the semester.
And you're in touch with faculty because I had a student who suffered from schizophrenia in my class who was in your program. So
Yeah.
we also had conversations with, and I also contacted the mentor. So you are really busy.
Yeah, so that keeps it, all those things going, does keep it busy, but at least with the scholarship, I don't have to go hunting for anything, you know, and it's been an ongoing agenda. So it's all part, and I can build on the agenda over the years, and it can go off in all these different directions. So it really has worked for me in that way to be able to accomplish multiple things at the same time. So, let's see if there's any-
I have a question.
Yeah.
Actually, the kind of two questions. One, I was wondering if you can just explain, I'm just a little confused about, you said it was a GEN course, but you also said it was like a research program course?
Well, the course for my OT students is the research class.
Okay, for the Columbia project.
That too. See, they're enrolled in these two research classes in their second year of the OT program, one in the fall and one in the spring, but they choose a track. So the
Oh,
track is either the mentoring track or the Columbia track.
and the Columbia track is the G course, the GEN.
No, that's still the OT program.
Oh,
The
okay.
GEN course is for the undergraduates who are the students with disabilities,
Oh,
who
okay.
are working with my OT students in the mentoring track.
Okay, so it's mostly through the program research,
Yes,
the research program course.
yeah,
Okay, because, I was just thinking about that in terms of the creation of the course. And then my second question was, you were saying that when the students come into the program, they have about a year and a half to come up with the $2,100 for the trip. Right?
yeah.
But what about those who can't come up with it? Because it's also a requirement for the program. So are they
Well, they
funding that
choose,
they're
like,
eligible
some
for?
of them choose not to go on the Columbia trip
Oh,
because
okay.
they don't have the money for it, so they choose the
okay.
mentoring.
Oh, I see.
track.
All right.
But it can also be built into their financial aid for that spring semester that they go. So some of them choose to do that because it really is a unique opportunity in that, I mean, they could go and visit Columbia on vacation if they wanted to, but they're not going to be hooked up with another university or, go to these clinical sites. So it is a unique opportunity. So some of them feel, they're already paying $60,000 for our program. So if that's how some of them say it. What's $2,000 more in the whole scheme of things, for an opportunity like this that they wouldn't have otherwise. So, they have a year and a half to make their mind up as to what they're going to do.
I was just wondering if there are any stocked-in resources. I mean, I know we have stuff for students traveling and things like that, but and then like with Rob Barney's program in social work, the one that he took over from the law crew before he retired, that was more. I'm just thinking about the different setups. That was more that it's a spring course, but then they go in May after commencement,
Right.
something like that. And yeah, he said the same thing, that they can go through financial aid, but obviously it depends on like how much of the aid that you used up during the school year. So I'm just trying to map out, like, it seems like the students that they know from the beginning that they need to come up with money to afford it. If they can't, more than likely they choose the other track, but I'm also wondering if there's space for students that want to choose that track but don't have the money, and I'm wondering if there were funds.
Like the Office of Global Engagement has scholarships. They can get like $400 to $500 alone from that. Yeah.
And your students know that.
Yes, yeah, they know all that up front. And then they have, our program, the way it runs September to May for that first year. And then they're off May, June, July, and August. So if they want to go on this trip, they know that they work over the summer to save money for it. And those who choose to go, they know way in advance that the money is rarely an issue, I guess, because they have so much advance notice and they are figuring, maybe their parents help them. I don't know what else happens, but
Well, and it seems like it's like written into your program, right?
Yeah.
You know it a while ahead.
yeah, and the way that it works is they pay, we go in spring break. 10 months before that, they put down $500. May of the year before, they put down $500. Then they pay September 30th, October 30th, November 30th, and December 15th. The remainder of that money is split over 4 payments. They pay about $350 each one of those times. Then there's a little bit that they bring with them, like the money for their meals, they bring with them when they go. That's about $200 or something like that.
That's a good
Yeah.
idea that it's broken up and then they have.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not like too bad if you break it up like
Yeah,
that.
write a check, $10 grand.
Yeah, and then the other good thing about it is then when I get their commitment in that May, they're putting down $500, then I know they're serious about it because I can't have them fluctuating either, because if they're going into that mentoring program, I need a mentee for them. And if they, change their mind, it has to be an exact number, every mentor for a mentee. So, that's why I need them to make a firm commitment about what they plan to do. So that works out pretty well.
And it really structures you too
Mm-hmm.
in your scholarship and all you're doing, because it just has you have a time frame.
Yeah,
So most of your writing happens in the summer.
yeah, yes, it does, it does. And now, like, for supported education, because I've done this for so long now, at least in the OT field, a person that people recognize as doing this, because it's been going on for so long. So in our mental health textbook, which is sort of the main mental health textbook for our whole profession, I do the chapter. Now I've done the second chapter, the second edition on supported education. So that's been good, because then I just stay, because I'm always doing it, I stay immersed in the literature about it. I'm not going off in different directions. I just put it all in this one pot and then have everything come from it. So that's been helpful too. That's been like a time saver rather than going in a bunch of different directions.
And what are your plans, your future plans with scholarship? What are you considering doing?
Well, I have an article right now that's about, I had a book chapter come out in November, another one just came out in January. I had an article published late last year. I have an article that's been accepted. I guess maybe it will come out in maybe like May or something like that. I have another article about 50% done. Then I'm starting on an article on the Columbia project.
Have you done anything longitudinally with the mentees?
No, and I guess I would like to do that at some point. What I have done with that, I guess I can say yes, I have, because the article that's coming out in May, what I've done with that is I've tracked retention and graduation and GPA. So I did follow them after so I guess I should say yes, I did. When you said longitudinal, I was thinking like years after they're out of college. I haven't done that, but the majority of them do come to me in the beginning of their stay here. So I did track if they're retained and what their graduation rate is. So the article that's coming out in May is mostly on retention and the factors of that, like who is retained and who wasn't retained. And now the article I'm working on now is on graduation. So it's like focusing on that and what were the successful components that these students had. So it's mostly, it's like 75-25, in terms of retention and those who have not stayed. But my goal with that program is twofold. And it's if these students have the wherewithal, the cognitive ability, the social ability, the motivation to want to be here and just need this extra help to bring them to that level. And with it, they can succeed and learn the skills they need to go on and be independent. Then let's do it and let's help them. But if they can't, if one or more of those pieces are missing to the point that it is just too difficult, then let's figure that out early on before they waste any more time and money. And then they can make an alternate plan and go, maybe they need to go to community college, you know, maybe they need to move back home, whatever it is for them. So I feel in both ways, if they can at least reach a decision with that, because some kids really that come here are in way over their head in many ways, and you can see they're not having a good experience. You know, they're alone and they're not doing well in their courses, and you know, they eat all their meals alone, they're not making friends. I mean, it's just so, and I think it'd be that way anywhere. It's
Have
just,
you been meeting with the enrollment office about the richness of the work you've been doing with this population at all?
no, I haven't done that, but I mean, I work very closely with the Learning Access Program. Yeah, I meet with them all the time, and with Pam Cross.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, everybody from the tutoring center.
The enrollment office seems to be approaching things from a holistic sense, so I'm sure they could use this information.
Yeah, enrollment management under Heinrich is taking a little bit more of a, instead of more of an inclusive internal thing, they're pushing things out.
Yeah, I'm not saying. Is that committee, is that part of that?